Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Lentini, and this is the podcast, Different Thinking for Different Times. And today, I got a guest that is going to challenge a lot of your thinking. He's going to challenge business leaders and CEOs to take a new approach to how they manage their company, but more or less, how they look at life. And it's a fascinating story because I have the founder, Norman Wolfe, and he founded the Living Organization Model. But what it's based on and how he got there is fascinating. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Norman. Norman, say hello to everyone.
Hi, Steve. Hello, audience. I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to a stimulating and exciting conversation and hope that you all take something useful out of it.
Yeah, well, I believe they will. And this podcast has always been about if it really bothers you, this is something to look at in life. That's God knocking on your noggin, saying, if this bothers you, check it out, because that's how we stretch. We don't stretch by staying comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So, Norman, talk to us about how you founded this, a little bit of your background, and then I've got a lot of other questions about what you're finding with the companies and the people you work with that actually adopt the model.
So, background: I was an executive for Hewlett Packard. I was with them for 15 years. My last position was running the Western Sales Region's administrative organization. It was a $1.2 billion region, and my organization was 1,300, one third of the total population. It was about 3,000. I had about 1,300 people in my organization. It was really a poor performing organization. So my job was to turn it around, which I did in 3 years. I was in that position about 5, 6 years. But after 15 years, 1988, I decided to leave the corporate world and see if I can swim in the ocean of entrepreneurship, as I like to say. So I left, and really what I learned in my career at HP, I started off as a technical person, but after 2 years, they gave me the opportunity to move into management. I was a district service manager, and I like to say a defining moment in my life was when my first performance review came back unacceptable in every category.
Wow.
So I had a choice to make. You said staying comfortable isn't the path forward. I could have gone back to being a technical guy. I was very successful in that role, but I chose to take on the challenge of learning how to lead organizations. And after 15 years, very successfully within HP. So when I left HP, I figured, I learned a lot about leading organizations. Maybe I can help other companies do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a consultant, and now it's 38 years later, and I'm still consulting and doing it.
Wow.
How I came upon the book, when I wrote the book, The Living Organization, I was starting around the turn of the century. I was coming out of an interim job as a chief operating officer for a startup company. And I was going to go back to my consulting practice. And I knew earlier on I didn't really have a specific focus. I just met people, and if I can help them, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for, I don't know, 12 years, 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to one of my clients. He was the CEO of a company I worked with for well over a decade. He had me on his board of directors, and I asked him, Bill, why do you keep hiring me as a consultant? Why did you put me on the board? He said, Norman, that's easy. You help me execute faster. And that gave me the understanding and the realization that my whole life has been centered around how do I help organizations perform better? With that focus, it became very clear to me very quickly that we're not very good at executing strategy. The statistics back then, which was about 2 decades old, said that 70% of companies fail to
Wow.
execute their strategy effectively.
Wow.
About that same time, I also was aware of the Gallup poll on employee engagement. They were saying 20 to 30% of people are engaged, which meant 70% of people weren't engaged. So you have 70% of companies failing to execute, 70% of employees aren't engaged in what they do. None of that made sense to me. It's like, wait a minute, something's And I want to put that in the context of all the wisdom of the books. And I mean, I see your bookshelf. You can see mine behind me. There's a unbelievable amount of wisdom about how to run an organization effectively. And it's now 2 decades later from that, and the statistics are still the same. That needle has not moved.
No.
So what's going on? And I remember back in my early training at HP, I was introduced to this concept of paradigms. And that's when I began to formulate that we are in a paradigm trap. It happened. I was at a conference and I was meeting this woman and we were just chit-chatting and she asked me what I did and I told her and I helped, I'm a consultant, executing strategies, my focus. And she said, well, what makes you different than anybody else? And the words that came out of my mouth was something to the effect of, I think it's because I see organizations different. I see them as something alive, vibrant. They're not just a machine. They've got a soul and a purpose. And her words to me was, you should write a book. I never thought of myself as an author. I struggled with the idea. I tried to ignore it. But once that particular seed was planted, you might say, God put me on a path that I could not resist. And I finally broke down and started writing and used a lot of writing consultants and help. And over a 6-year period of time, I finally ended up publishing The Living Organization, which postulates that a new paradigm is needed, that the paradigm of thinking of an organization as a black box that takes inputs and produces outputs. Like a machine, leaders design the black box. And whether we like it or not, no matter what fancy words we use, that relegates employees to just components in the machine. And that's not what it is. It's really it's a person. It operates like a person. It thinks like a person. It responds like a person does. And the people in the organization are really the living cells of that organization. And that raises the question, how does a person create results? And how do you apply that now to an organization? And that's what the work of the living organization is.
So what happens when people start to look at their company as a whole living organization? What starts to happen? And how do you enroll the CEOs in that, right? Because so many are objective and KPIs. And
well, let me answer the second one first, because that was a question that I lived with when I was starting to write the book, and I have been living with since its initial release in 2011. By the way, the second book of the trilogy is now at the printer, and we hope to launch in June sometime of 2026.
Okay.
Which is called Leading the Living Organization, which really speaks to the question you raised. What I knew from the beginning was, and having been a leader of an organization and helped so many CEOs over the years, it had to address the number one responsibility of a leader, which is to ensure the organization creates the results necessary to keep the organization viable in the future. Without anything else that doesn't address that is and should be mostly irrelevant to a CEO. So I had to figure out a way to help CEOs understand that shifting the paradigm was in their best interest to help them resolve the number one responsibility, which is to create results. I mentioned earlier that the question that I was looking for is, how do we make organizations more effective? So the question became, if an organization acts like a person, how does a person create results? And that's what led to what I call the 3 fields of energy, right? If you think about it, we as people create results first and foremost by doing stuff. Simple. In that regard, we're very much like a machine. We get organized, we set goals, we have our goals, call them KPIs or just goals or dreams or visions, whatever you want to do. And then we set out to do stuff. Here's where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. Our doing is strongly impacted and influenced by the quality and nature of the relationships we have. And to explain that quite simply, think about how you feel when, say, you run into conflict in your family, whether it be with your kids or your spouse or your parents, or you leave the home and you got this nagging, eating feeling inside of you about some issue that is unresolved. your efforts, your doing this, your activity goes way down. It's just a struggle to get through the day. And then once it's resolved, you're energetic again. And so in business, we talk about high performing teams. We talk about things like synergy. Well, all that is that people are in relationship with each other that feels supportive and connected so that their activity is amplified. Their energy of activity is amplified. So we know relationship is a key element when it comes to people, which is very different than machines, because machines, you only have to optimize the activity to get the results.
Yeah, the machine doesn't care that the machine next to it might get promoted.
You're right.
And I might not.
Yeah,
The machine doesn't care.
Machines don't get into relationship conflicts.
No.
That doesn't exist.
No.
Here's the other piece to it, the third element that I call context. And it's a little difficult to understand, so I'll try to break it down into mostly two component parts. One is, we've all heard the statement, if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right. This just simply says that what you believe is possible or not possible will define the activity you do. The second component of it is, which is sort of a corollary to the first, we tend as humans to get ourselves organized to respond to life efficiently. Right? And when something happens, we don't think about what it means, or we did that when we were growing up. We figured out if I say please to people, I get a positive response. If I say thank you, I get a positive response. If I just take from somebody, I might get a negative response. So we learn all these meaning, behavior patterns of how to get what we want. If you collect all of that together, what I like to call our psychic DNA, because it's like our physical DNA, it helps us respond to events without having to think about it. You can call it a belief system if you want. That's another term we often use. And we call it context because it sets the meaning for our activity. So how we respond in the relationships and how we respond to what we do is all driven by our context. And most of it has become unconscious. So goal is to create results. I've optimized myself to perform in a way that gets the results I'm currently getting. Cool. If that's all I want to do, I'm in good shape. I am optimized to do that. I know my context drives how I interact with people. My context drives what I can and cannot do in my belief system. And I am optimized. I just keep moving forward. Here's the problem. Doing what I'm doing does not produce anything new. It's just so there's no growth. And you can think of growth as I'm producing outcome A, but now I want to produce outcome B. That's one definition of growth, right? Hopefully the growth is in a positive way. That I'm enhancing my life somehow, right? We know, it's fairly common knowledge, the saying that if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're expecting a different result, right? So the implicit part of that
definition of insanity, according to Einstein, right?
So the implicit part of that is I'm optimized to produce outcome A, and now I want to produce outcome B, so I have to change my behaviors. There's the part that people miss. What drives behaviors? The context. What is my underlying belief systems, values, knee-jerk reactions, automatic responses, whatever you want to call them, that causes me to behave this way, because what I'm behaving isn't going to get me the results I want. So I got to dig down into my underlying context. That's the way we as humans are actually designed to create results. So if I really want to create new results, I have to take in what's not working, what you talked about earlier, the negative things that's happening to me in life, from a positive perspective, and say that's an indication for me to explore my context, my belief systems, that's causing me to behave this way, so I can change that context so I can behave in a different way. It's kind of a simple formula in many regards. Not easy to do, but a simple formula. So if that's how humans create outcomes, and an organization is a person Guess how organizations create content?
Mm-hmm.
They do stuff. They are a hotbed of relationships internally and externally,
Mm-hmm.
and they are driven by a collective context, an organizational context.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the basic formula, if you will, for how a leader can understand how to better create the outcomes they want to create. Here's the problem. In the machine paradigm, which is the way we were trained, all we know how to do is optimize for activity. Activity is the least impactful component of the three to create outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Context is the most impactful element because it drives relationship and activity.
Mm-hmm.
So with that framework, now I can go to a leader and I say, you want to create better outcomes? These are the forces that are actually creating that's driving the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You're primarily focusing on one. It's like you're moving deck chairs around on the Titanic and your boat is sinking.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you want to go to the root cause of what's creating it all?
Mm-hmm.
And they go, yes. So that's the key to helping them understand, giving them a new, deeper understanding of what's causing the results they're getting, so they
Mm-hmm.
have a better opportunity to. Now to the first part of your question. How do they receive it?
Right.
They receive it extremely well when they finally get that pattern that I was talking about, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
very hard for them to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go into, well, how do I change context? Well, this is really difficult. This is not something I've learned. And as I said, the second book, Leading the Living Organization, will be coming out this year. It talks about the 6 key skill sets. And you'll love this. So the number one skill set, the ability to get out of your head and into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Foundational skill set, I call it.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important? When you're dealing with relationship and context, these are not observable fields of energy.
Right.
We as humans already know that. This is not really something new. We experience it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I walk home and I ask my wife, how's things going? And she goes, fine. See, even you laughed, right?
Yeah,
There's
it's the
there's
answer.
something in my body that knows I'm hearing the words. That's the logical, rational, objective part. Oh, okay. She says it's fine. Everything's good. But there's something else being communicated in that message. The energy that's surrounding her, that's coming out in the words, the tonality of the word fine, the way she said it,
Mm-hmm.
is giving me data that allows me to make a different decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to just accept the words. I'm probably going to say, instead of saying, oh, good, I'm glad everything's fine, I'm probably going to say, honey, what's the matter? And I'll apply that to business, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go into a situation, I ask my people, and they tell me everything's fine, but something is not ringing with that.
Mm-hmm.
What are we sensing? It's not the objective data. It's not the logical, rational data that comes through reports and numbers and all that. It's something intuitive. It's a felt sense. It's the body's picking up energy.
The
So,
energy of the answer. Right.
and the energy is
Fine.
the answer.
I'm fine.
So you've got to go from the head, which just knows how to process rational, objective, measurable data,
Mm-hmm.
APIs, as you said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
to the body that knows how to sense and feel what's really going on in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I often tell this story. When I was at HP, we learned a concept called MBWA, Management by Wandering Around.
Around. Right.
A lot
Yeah.
of people don't really understand what that meant, because what I was taught was, go out into the shop floor, go out into the offices, listen to the people, feel what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
sense what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that right, you'll know what the reports are going to tell you way
Mm-hmm.
before the numbers come in.
Yeah, the screenshot.
It's learning how to turn the frequency of the body from the thinking state to the sensing state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a foundational skill.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do that, once you know how to do that, you can enter into conversations with people from that state.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have compassion and empathy and caring and love and express that while focused on the goals we're setting. So we
Mm-hmm.
teach heart-centered communication. We teach reframing context. we teach a thing called improv mindset, which is really how do you deal with uncertainty. The reason I call it improv mindset is because my wife was an improviser for over 20 years in theater improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met her and she was active in that field, it became very clear to me that improvisation helps us deal with uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's world, dealing with uncertainty is a skill we need.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, a key part of it is, as I said, if the people are the living cells of the organization, then as a leader, I've got to really learn the art of developing people.
Mm-hmm.
Leader as consultant, we like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing when to balance being a manager and a supervisor or a consultant, and when to be a coach. And
Mm-hmm.
so those are the 6 skills we teach
Mm-hmm.
leaders how to do, and it'll all be in the second book, Leading the Living Organization.
Mm-hmm.
But this is difficult. I mean, shifting the paradigm is not easy, and I recognize that. So we work very closely with leaders and guiding them through this transition and helping them adapt this new mindset.
And how far down does it sink in? Because I water some of my plants, and there's a few that the water sits on top for a while, and there's many that take the water right in. So what level does this seep down to?
Well, it depends on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked with probably over the last since COVID, I probably worked with 5, 6 different CEOs in their organization.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. To the degree the individual is willing to be open and explorative,
Mm-hmm.
it goes very deep very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the reports back to me is, wow, this really makes a difference. To those who are kind of curious and interested and want to move that way, but are kind of stuck in their
Mm-hmm.
way of thinking, and I don't judge this. And when I say stuck in their way of thinking, I don't mean that as judgmental. As I said, shifting the paradigm is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Being a leader of an organization with the responsibilities they have, most of us don't appreciate the degree of responsibilities leaders carry in every decision they make. So when they're experimenting with a new mindset,
Mm-hmm.
I am very empathetic and compassionate with the challenge they face to take the risk to try something fundamentally different
Mm-hmm.
when the demands on them to produce the results is very high.
Mm-hmm.
I have to balance that. We have to balance that as consultants to appreciate what they're facing.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it, one leader I've been working with is moving so fast it's blowing my mind. I would say within a year he's 50% into really getting it. He happens to be the CFO of a company.
Mm-hmm.
He's moving slightly faster than the CEO. The
Mm-hmm.
CEO is finally, after about 3 years, really picking it up.
Mm-hmm.
And another one I've been working with for 3 years, and he's just now having those aha moments of, I'm really shooting myself in the foot with my old way of thinking. Even though I think I'm doing it the right way, I'm not. And so we've got some of that. So it varies. And it's really a function of how open-minded, how willing to explore, how into a new domains of thinking.
Mm. Very much like what I start with people about the acorn brain, because it's not very sophisticated. But what I talk about is that's that little voice in your head, and the tendency is, for many years, right, and people haven't been given other tools about it, is
That's
to
right.
believe they're thinking.
That's right.
And what they don't realize is the brain, up until the age of 35, neuroscientists have done this research, that unless people work on themselves, they can predict the next 35 years. Getting to know that person, if they don't change and start to reprogram their mind, they can predict it, because the brain remembers, like driving or anything new that we learn, that where we're functional, we're doing things. We have to learn to ski or bowl or snowboard or drive, right? Eventually, the brain takes over. You don't have to go back to the beginning driver school. You don't have to go back on the bunny slope, because you've got the confidence and the brain remembers. what people didn't realize for many years was emotionally, the brain's doing the same thing. Oh, this person, we know what you do there. You give them a piece of your mind. That person you get upset with. This person you really like. It's from the past.
That's right.
And so there's a real reprogramming. And what you said about people being willing, it's the same for the work. When I ask them to start questioning their thinking by first noticing, my subject matter is to get them to develop a level of thinking above their thinking. Something Dr. Srikumar Rao talked about many years ago when he wrote the book, Are You Ready to Succeed?
Familiar with
If they're
Dr.
not
Rao's
willing,
work.
if they're really dug in about believing the thinking and they want to be right, I say, like you do, it's okay. Fine, let's stay with that. And how's that working over time, right? We begin to look at the journey of them hanging on to their thinking. And what helps often, what breaks the nut open often is feedback. 360 feedback is finally hearing from others that work with them. Wow, I guess I do have things to fix.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, the way you described the acorn and the thinking process and how we formed the thinking and locked it into place, it's really important. It's what gives us the ability to drive, to snowboard, to ski, to read, to calculate. It's a very important element. And once you lock it in place, you're stuck. What you call acorn is almost synonymous, probably is synonymous with what I call context. I would say is the same thing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And
It's
what
belief systems as well, because I wrote the book No BS Coaching. And of course, BS stands for a couple of things. You can imagine one of them. And the other I put in the book is it also stands for belief systems. That if we don't begin to recognize the belief systems that are holding us back,
that's right.
How can we change them?
That's right.
So now, so you start with CEOs and then they begin to lead differently and that impacts the whole organization,
Well,
or do they enroll others as they go?
Yeah, the way I work with organizations, I start with the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I work with the CEO and the executive team simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have to kind of dance together, so to speak. And then we begin to bring it down to the whole organization. One of the clients I have actually had their HR learning and development people go through my 13 weeks TLO practitioner certification program. So he can bring in the skills in-house and have an in-house consultant.
And the TLOs, folks, stands for the Living Organization.
The Living Organization, yes, thank you.
Right. Well, I want to keep bringing that up because this is a good pause to put in how they find you. They find you at thelivingorganization.com, right?
Yep.
Is it the livingorganizationmodel.com or the Living Organization?
The livingorganization.com.
Yeah.
And they can also write me nwolfe at quantumleaders.com.
Yeah,
that's my
nwolfe, WOLFE. You see it on the screen, folks, at quantumleaders.com.
That's right.
So what is the impact on some of the companies that you've worked with? What have you witnessed as people begin to change to a living organization? I love that. They get to recognize the whole company is a being.
Yes. Well, you know, I'll just report what some of the CEOs have told me.
Yeah.
Things like greater collaboration begins to happen. Silos break down naturally. They are witnessing greater sense of ownership for the collective, not just the individual performance. Obviously, what this does for the CEO is it takes tremendous amount of tension and pressure off of them because they now have their organization driving towards the outcomes, not just them driving the organization to drive to the outcome. Very different way of living. And of course, they're producing the outcomes they want much faster. So all of that is the result of it.
So the living organization, when you talk about that, it gets people, changes the organization over time. What do you see in the engagement factor?
In terms of how we engage with clients?
Well, no, when I think of what you said about the Gallup poll, that only 60 to 80% of organizations were not in, their employees didn't feel engaged.
One of the key principles for us behind what is engagement, I have this little formula that says engagement equals empowerment, and empowerment can only happen or is equal to choice. Let me translate that a different way.
Sure. Well, that's your mathematical background. You made it a formula.
Imagine an organization where the people are doing, or the people want to do what the organization needs to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you get when you start reframing the organization. In the top-down organization or the traditional organization, everything flows top to bottom. And I, as the leader, set the strategy, and then I get with my management team. Well, I set the vision, and then I get with my management team, and they, together we establish the strategy, and we establish goals, and we assign
Mm-hmm.
goals to each of the departments, and then the department heads take those goals and work with their people and their leadership team, and so forth
Mm-hmm.
and so on,
Mm-hmm.
and it cascades down. At the end, people get their goals given to them, maybe negotiated, but it's basically given to them. And their goal as a person is to please their leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's the traditional view. And at the end of the year, they get evaluated.
Mm-hmm.
They get a report card.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, instead of doing it that way, the leader goes to the executive team and they
Mm-hmm.
say, this is the vision and the objectives of the organization. I want to know how you want, I'm going to emphasize the word want,
Mm-hmm.
to contribute to it. Now, there are certain boundaries around that. They can't just say whatever they want. There are certain limitations, resource constraints, values of the organization that have to be adhered to. But now I'm asking the employee, what do you want to do to contribute to the success of the organization? And again, the emphasis is on what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
We call those contribution conversations or contribution agreements. We have a kind of a process for it, but the process isn't what's important. It's the essence of getting them to want to contribute to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with one client now, and they've got a very well established strategy, and we're working on what are the behaviors that have to change, and how do we get the employees to choose to do what the organization needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a process. It takes time, and quite frankly, it takes as much time for the employees to learn that new way of thinking as it does the leaders, because most employees. I'll share one story. I was presenting contribution agreements and the essence of it, and I said the goal is to make you CEO of your department or the CEO of your job.
Mm-hmm.
It's your job. You're the head of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're your boss. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you, how are you going to contribute to this collective organization?
Mm-hmm.
And when I presented the principle, one of the directors in the group said, wow, that gives me all the freedom to. And before she even finished the statement, she said, oh, but that makes me responsible for the outcomes. It's like, so you got to understand that in our society, in most societies in the world today, employees have not been trained to be CEOs of their lives. And so part of the challenge is helping them through that process. It's a developmental orientation that we have to take to help them through the thinking process and the learning and the seeing the big picture and taking accountability and all of that. So all of that's tied into the living organization framework. It's not just a simple, here's the formula, impact equals activity times relationship squared to the power of context. It's not the 4 steps or the 6 skill sets. It's shifting to what I call a developmental orientation. Your people are the living cells. The capacity to execute is a function of capability and maturity of those living cells.
I love that maturity, right?
Yeah, it only comes into play if you understand it's a person. Then it has maturity. And you learn the relationship between how the collective influences the individual and the individual influences the collective. And as a leader, when you begin to learn how to work with all that, then all of a sudden you're really creating an organization that is, just like we do with our children, is now capable of living on its own and producing the results it collectively wants to produce. That's the objective of the living organization framework.
Well, I can tell you, it sounds like the thing that struck me was early on too, when you said they move from the heart, from the head to the heart, And then now they're viewing the organization as a living entity, the whole organization. And then someone has the arm, the right arm, someone has the left arm, someone has the leg, someone has, right, the heart, someone has, they
Someone's the
all have a
lung, someone's the
responsibility.
digestive system. It's all there.
Right. And if they're going to be the CEO, they have accountability and take responsibility, but they can deliver that same message to their team that, hey, we're part of this organization, that we're the limbs, or we're the heart, or we're the liver, or what we are is our own division, and let's do what we can to contribute to this whole organization. I love the message.
Yeah,
I think we have to have another session too at some point, you and I.
well, as I said, I'd love to. The book's coming out in June, so maybe we can do another
With
pod
the
focused
rollout.
on,
Of the
I'd
book.
love to do that.
So again, this is Norman Wolfe, and I'm going to repeat how you reach him. thelivingorganization.com or N Wolfe, and you can see his name spelled there, Norman Wolfe, N Wolfe, WOLFE at quantumleaders.com. And we've talked a lot about quantum thinking and the quantum field for people in this Different Thinking podcast, for people that don't want to call the creative life force or the goddess or God. They don't want to use those words. Okay, fine. You want to call it the quantum field? That's fine too. God doesn't care. It's been prepared for us to live. And what Norman's doing is helping companies truly live as an organization, as a being, a living being. And that is different thinking in the corporate world.
Very different thinking.
Very different thinking. It's very much like there's differences in our work, but it's what I'm talking to people about is overcoming small-minded thinking and what they've used over and over in the past, believing their brain. And it's not that our brain isn't beautiful. It's just not always a friend. Because it works, it's actually urging us to reprogram it. When we react, all we've done is taken the advice of the brain. And if we pause, I'm not saying it's not right, because sometimes it is, but if we pause and come into our heart, we may find there's a lot of other ways. There's limitless possibilities, other ways to respond instead of reacting. And that's what you're teaching people in the living organization model.
Yes.
I love it. I love it, Norm.
Yeah, that was very well said, Steve. The brain is a very important tool. It has established what we call context. You call it the acorn. It guides us into being able to navigate life effectively. But in its guidance, it has limited us because it's optimized us to behave a certain way up until that point in time. And it's those opportunities that challenge that limiting framework, the things that cause us to feel uncomfortable, that is the opportunity to go into the heart, to see that disruption or that attack on my worldview as something positive, as an opportunity to move into something new.
Yeah.
To expand the context so it incorporates a bigger part of the world.
Yeah. Expanding the context might lead to a dialogue, and a dialogue leads to a discovery and perhaps a compromise or a new way, a total new way. Hey, I hadn't thought of that.
Exactly right.
And until we discover our context, until we discover what's running us, how are we going to change it?
That's exactly right.
I love your work.
Thank you, Steve.
We are in alignment. It's easy for my brain is telling you, you love Norman, you love his work. Okay, great, because you agree, Stephen. All right, I'm going to tell everyone that's listening, it's not confirmation bias. I've looked at his model and I've listened to Norman. We had a nice chat before the podcast, and what he's talking about is beneficial for organizations. And so you want to reach out to the Living Organization or N Wolfe at quantumleaders.com. You will make the final decision, but I'll tell you, you won't go wrong. Talk to Norman Wolfe.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm grateful we met. We're going to follow up. We're going to do something along with the rollout of your next book. Tell everybody what the next book is again.
It's called Leading the Living Organization.
Leading the Living Organization. Now, the Living Organization is also a book, right, that people can get now.
It's on Amazon. It's on Smashwords. You can buy it in multiple different ways. You can get it through our website.
And you mentioned a trilogy. What's the second book then?
The second book is Leading the Living Organization. So, if you look at the trilogy, it has three parts to it. There's the
Okay, got it.
encounter with the new idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then the journey into learning, really embodying the new idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then the return, which is taking all of that and saving the world, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So the first book was The Living Organization. That's the encounter. That's just the philosophy behind it, mostly,
Mm-hmm.
with a little bit of practicality.
Mm-hmm.
The second book, Leading the Living Organization, is the skills necessary for a leader to actually lead an organization. When I say a leader, I just don't mean the CEO. It could be the head of a sales department or a
Mm-hmm.
team manager or a project manager, anybody that leads others. And then the third book will be Creating Results the Living Organization Way, which is the return. That's actually putting all of this into practical, all the experiences I've had with leaders in implementing this and what the challenges have been and how they've overcome it using the Living Organization Framework as the breakthrough.
That's great. I look forward to finding ways to help you and look forward to staying connected in whatever way we figure out, because I think it's there's no coincidence that we met. It's God's way of staying anonymous. Coincidence.
Yes.
And so we
Thank you.
met for a
I love
reason.
that. Yes. Thank you so
Norman,
much.
I am grateful we met. And this conversation is just the beginning. And I look forward to getting when the book comes out, we'll have a follow-up podcast and
We'll
finding ways
send
to
you,
support
we'll
your work.
send you a copy as soon as I have them.
I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. You're welcome. Leave the window open. Remember that.